sure you all been wondering how the Kubota BX is coming along. I have been working on the exhaust stack. I've been doing a little bit each night for the last couple nights. I get home from work and I'll do a couple, put a couple hours out here, measuring and cutting and trying to figure it out, tack welding. Finally, I think I got to a place where I was happy with it. As I told you guys, there's a lot of things that I had to make sure I cleared. A lot of clearance issues coming off the muffler that is really tight here. Trying to avoid the intake hose, trying to avoid the hood bonnet, and just trying to get it to line up just right on the hood, and then trying to get the stack exactly where I want it, left to right and front to back. So I think I finally got it where I want it, and now I'm going to show you guys what I came up with. Okay, so over here is my new exhaust system. So this is the OEM exhaust. This is made by Kubota. The way I have them sitting here right now is the way that they would be sitting in the tractor. So the front of the tractor would be here, and the rear of the tractor would be over here. So I got the aftermarket muffler. The first thing I did was test fit it, obviously. I wanted to make sure that it fit correctly in the tractor. It is a little bit bigger. I don't know if you guys can tell on camera, but their welds are a little bit bigger. It's constructed a little bit differently. You can see this edge is folded over, where Kubota's is more or less a welded edge. But it's still a very heavy duty muffler. I was actually impressed. It's just as heavy as the Kubota. So when I got it, I made sure it fit. And once I knew it fit, first thing I had to do was to cut out this old exit pipe. So what I did was I took my plasma cutter, and I'll show you on this one. I took my plasma cutter and I basically just went right around the welds, all the way around with my plasma cutter. And I cut this right out of there, okay? And then I had an open hole. So once I had that open hole, I basically had my start point of where I was going to start the stack. The next thing I did was I bolted this muffler back on the tractor. I started it up. I was hoping the exhaust would be a little bit louder than the OEM. And when I fired it up, it was actually quieter. I think this is partly due to it being brand new and it's not quite broken in yet. I know with like expansion and contraction, as mufflers get older, the baffles inside there start to flex and open up a little bit, and that over time makes it a little bit louder. So I knew it was going to get a little bit louder, but it definitely wasn't loud enough for me. So I figured while I had it on the tractor, I can kind of fine tune it. So I'll show you what I did. Okay, so if you look inside this muffler, you should be able to see the baffle system. So it's a straight pipe that goes from one end to the other, and it's got like a corrugated pipe. It's got the holes in it, and that allows the exhaust to go through them holes and be restricted, and then it comes out the other end. Now there's a plate in there. You can see that plate. That plate is about dead center of this muffler. So the only way for that exhaust to get to the other side is to go through that corrugated pipe. So what I did was I drilled holes in that baffle. And I didn't want to do too much at a time, so I just drilled one hole, and then I started it. I listened to it, and it definitely deepened the tone quite a bit, but it wasn't quite where I wanted it, so I drilled another hole, and it sounded about perfect. It was deeper, but it really wasn't louder. It gave it like a tougher, meaner sound, but it didn't necessarily make it louder, which is good, because that's what I was going for. So that's, if you guys just want to make your exhaust a little bit louder, take a drill bit and drill a couple holes through that baffle plate, and then that'll give your exhaust 2 more openings to go through before it hits this exit pipe over here. So another reason I did that was because I went from 1 3/8 inches pretty much to 1.5 inches. This is 1.5 inches that I went straight out of the muffler with. So I made it bigger to give it a little more airflow with the baffling as well. So I opened the baffling up a little bit. It's got more airflow coming out, so it definitely is going to open the exhaust up a little bit. But I didn't want to modify it too much to where I lose that back pressure, because that's not good for the engine. And I don't think what I did here is going to hurt anything at all. It should help the engine actually flow a little better, and it should help it sound a lot better. Since this muffler was slightly bigger, in order to get it in and out easily, I had to take off the exhaust manifold. So while I had the exhaust manifold off, I figured I might as well paint this too. It was starting to rust. It was Kubota gray at first, I believe. I pretty much only had some gray blotches left. The rest was rust. So I figured while I had it off, I might as well paint that black to match. Actually looks really nice. When you put the shield back on it, it should look pretty nice. And I also just painted the nuts and bolts that mount it as well. And I painted everything with this high temp flame-proof VHT paint. I've used that stuff in the past and it works really good. So yeah, I should be all set. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mount this all up to the tractor. You guys can watch as I finagle that exhaust back in there. I'm going to mount up the exhaust manifold, and then we're going to give it a test fire and see what it sounds like. Last but not least, the part I'm saving for the very end is the stack pipe. So the stack pipe is pretty much just going to sit in here like this. and it's gonna go up through the hood. I just basically drew real quick with a Sharpie how I'm gonna notch the pipe so that the exhaust fumes are blowing out sideways and not straight up. So that's my plan to eventually do that. I'm not even gonna be using this pipe. This is actually conduit. I actually have regular 1.5" exhaust pipe right here, and that's what I'll be using. But I was using this conduit as a mock-up so I didn't waste all my regular exhaust pipe. So yeah, that's gonna be the last thing I have to do, aside from drilling my hole in the hood. So I did mark this out last night as well, which this was a son of a gun to try to mark this out. It was really, really tough. I pretty much had to butt the piece of pipe straight up against the hood where the stack is going to go. And then I had to make a dot, and what I did was I measured that dot out 1.5 inches, and then I just took half of that, so 3/4 and 3/4, and I made an X with 4 dots, and then I drew a circle around them dots, and that's how I got my center and where my pipe is gonna go. So I'm gonna end up going larger than this hole. This is 1.5 inches in diameter. I'm gonna end up going 2 inches. So what I'll do is I'll use a 2-inch hole saw bit, and I'll punch a hole, a pilot hole dead center, and then I'll drill my hole probably from this side going outward. And then I'll use some fender trim to go on the inside of the hole so it looks nice, and I should be all set. We'll get to more on that when I get to putting this back together, so let's get going on this. All right, guys, well, this is it. First Kubota BX with a stack pipe. I searched online for days and days and days about Kubota BX and a stack. You could barely find any stacks on a subcompact tractor. There was only a couple of them. The only thing I found was on OrangeTractorTalks.com. There was a guy with a 2380, and he was asking people, you know, how he would go about doing it if he were to put a stack on it. And I actually messaged the guy and asked him if he ever did it, and he never got back to me. That's the only Kubota BX I've ever heard of even trying to get a stack put on it. So I'm really happy with the way it came out. I'll give you guys a close-up. I got the entire exhaust painted. I got the manifold painted. Come around this way. It's like brand new. So the manifold's all painted. I didn't paint the nuts and bolts very well, but it actually turned out really, really nice. You know, my whole key to doing this was I wanted to keep a factory look. I didn't want to start cutting braces off and, you know, doing anything extreme, because if I didn't like this, I want to be able to just unbolt this muffler and bolt my stock one back on like nothing ever happened. Or if I ever go to sell it and the guy doesn't like the stack pipe, I could give him the OEM muffler with it, and all he's got to do is unbolt the muffler and bolt the OEM one back on. You know, so I didn't want to modify anything, and that was very, very hard to try to build this without making any modifications to the tractor. The stack pipe, I'm going to be painting this, so it's not painted right now, and I don't have the right length. I'm not exactly sure what the length is going to be, but I am going to notch it so that the exhaust will shoot out this way. I basically just got to figure out how high I want it, and then I got to paint it. But other than that, all I got to do is place it in here. Okay guys, well, let's give this thing its first startup and see what it sounds like. It's probably going to be hard to hear because we're in the shed and it's going to reverberate. It's not going to give us a true sound. And I can't keep this in here because it's just going to rattle like crazy because it's loose. I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to have the stack come through the hood yet, but we'll talk about that after I start it and try this out, because I'm kind of anxious to see what it sounds like. Okay, here we go. First startup. Figure I get the loader out of the way so I can talk about kind of what I did here. Okay, so as you guys know, the original exhaust came out basically this way, okay? And that's where it came through the exit hole, as you can see right there on the bonnet. So what I did was I cut that off, I cut around it, and I cut the old exit pipe off. Here's the old exit pipe, and that came out like this. So I got a 90-degree exhaust piece, 1.5 inches in diameter, and I basically cut it up. I cut each end of it, and I used the section that I needed to use to make this turn. I also kept it the same distance that this was inside the muffler, because I didn't want to change, you know, the dynamics of the muffler. So I measured what this distance is from here to here, and I made sure I left that amount of pipe on the inside of the muffler still, so that I didn't change, you know, the true sound of the way the muffler was going to work or sound. So once I came off this way, then from there I used another 1.5 inch 90, which is right here, and you can see I cut off the end of this 90. So then I welded the two 90s together. Now this looks pretty basic and pretty simple. I got 2 pieces of pipe here, but let me tell you, it was a lot of work to get this just right, to fit everything just right. As you gotta keep in mind, I had a lot of things to measure. I had to make sure that I made this bend in a certain amount of distance. I couldn't be out more than about 1.5 inches or so off this muffler, because if I was gonna be getting into the hood bonnet. So the bonnet comes out to about here, which gives me about 1 inch or so of clearance so that the hood bonnet will not melt. So that was the first problem I ran into. The second problem I ran into was blocking off this. I didn't want to block this nut off so that I couldn't get this exhaust bracket off. So as you see, this bracket goes to the engine. So I couldn't make this so tight to where I was blocking the stud off. Otherwise, it would have had to weld the bracket to the muffler and it wouldn't have been adjustable. So I didn't want to do that. So I had to stay out enough to do that, but I had to stay in enough to keep away from the hood bonnet that's going to sit about here. Okay, so then the next problem I had was where I curved it up. I had to make sure I stayed away from this intake hose. And if you can see, I got plenty of distance here. I'm not worried about that at all. We have a tractor at work. It's a New Holland T1520. And the exhaust on that thing is like a 1/4 inch to an 1/8 inch away from the intake hose. And then there's another portion of it that's about a 1/4 inch away from the radiator hose. So if they can do that on that tractor and it was never a problem, and it's like a 15-year-old tractor, then I'm sure my 1-inch gap here is not going to be any issue. The last issue was when I come up with the stack, I had to make sure that I cleared these braces inside the hood here. And as you can see, this is where I ended up. I already drew it out. So at first when I did this and had it tacked in place, I was actually on this brace. And I didn't want to have to cut out all this bracing and ruin my headlight bezel and all that. So I knew I had to get that forward a little bit farther. But the issue with that was if I came any farther forward, I was going to be into this intake hose. So there was just so many different things that I had to try to avoid and getting it perfect where I needed to get it. And doing all that while still making it look, you know, original and factory. And so that I didn't have to chop anything else up on a tractor. So it was a very tough job. So like I said, you look at it, it looks very simple. You got 2 pieces of pipe, but it was very, very complex and complicated. There's a lot of measurements and a lot of thoughts in my head to make this work. But I'm glad I ended up getting it to work. I mean, I'm not done yet, but the hardest part I think is over with. So back to the hood brace. What I ended up doing to get around that hood brace was I had to put a slight taper on this 90. So I had to, instead of it being straight up and down, as you could see, I had to kind of angle it like this a little bit. So what that does is that was the only way I can get around that hood brace. And honestly, I don't think it looks that bad. I think it actually looks pretty good. Let me lower this back down. Because it kind of goes with the body line of the hood. You know, nothing on this tractor is really like a, straight and square anyway. You look at the loader frame's going down. You look at these hydraulic lines, they got an angle going this way. So everything's kind of got an angle going this way or this way. I said, what the hell, I don't think it's going to look bad if I have to put a slight angle on it. So if you look at that, you can see it's got a slight angle going this way. And originally I had it going exactly perfectly plumb. But like I said, I couldn't do that because I had to get around that hood brace. So that was the last major issue I ran into. I had this muffler in and out about 15 times. I had it all scratched to hell. And finally I got it all right. I had it tacked up and I welded it and painted everything with that high temp paint. And that's the final result. So my last issue now is how I'm going to go through the hood. I could put the hood on with this off there. The bonnet goes on just fine. The hood goes on just fine. I can drill a hole in the hood and slip this through the hood and into here, which was my original idea. But the problem is I think it's going to vibrate and rattle constantly. So I think I'm going to have to go about this differently. I'm still going to cut the hole in the hood, but I think I'm going to have a larger pipe permanently attached to the hood. And then I'm going to leave the stack just slightly poking through the hood so that the hood will still open. And basically when that hood comes down and closes, that chimney stack that's attached to the hood will cover, it'll slip over the amount of pipe that's sticking through the hood. And then this way I can get by without having to take and remove a piece of pipe every time I want to open my hood. I don't know if you guys understand what I'm saying because it's kind of complicated to talk about. Let me get the bonnet back on and I'll get the hood on so you guys can see what it completely looks like all back together. And then I'll talk to you a little bit more about my plans for that stack pipe coming up through. Okay guys, real quick, now that I got the bonnet in place, now you guys can see what I was talking about how far in I had to keep that exhaust. I had to keep it away from that bonnet. And as you can see, there's all kinds of room. I don't have any worries at all that this will melt. Not to mention that original exit pipe, when it came out of here, it came very close. I forget exactly where it came close, but I know it was within, an inch or so of the hood bonnet. So I'm pretty sure that this is going to have no problem here. It's hard for you guys to tell on camera, but there is all kinds of room down there. So that was one of the biggest struggles, is making sure I kept it tight against the engine so I can keep it away from this hood bonnet. And then, as I said before, the other struggle was making sure I kept it away from this intake hose. So I can get my fingers all the way around this, no problem. I just want to mention that real quick before I get the hood put on. Okay guys, it's finally back together. Everything except for the stack is done. I don't have the main hood bolt for the hinge tight yet, so the hood's kind of, wobbly back and forth. Because there's just this one bolt that holds it on there. But I just put this on there to illustrate to you guys my plan. So as you can see right now, the hood will close just fine. It'll lock into place. My plan is, instead of drilling a hole and removing a pipe every time I got to open and close the hood, I'm thinking I'm going to add a short piece off of here with an exhaust clamp that'll hold this nice and tight so it's not vibrating. And this pipe will be here all the time. Okay, so how I'm going to have it is, when I close this hood, that piece of metal is going to be poking through the hood just enough so that I can still get the hood open without it interfering. Okay? And on top of this hood, I'm going to have it like riveted, a permanently attached stack that comes off the hood itself, okay, and goes up. And then that way, when I flip the hood forward, this stack that's permanently attached will come out and stay on the hood. So when the hood comes down, the stack will fit right over top of that exhaust piece that's sticking out of the hood. I don't know if you guys get what I'm saying, but that's the best way I could really describe it to you. I can make a couple beads of weld on it, which was my original thought, was to do a couple beads of weld around the outside of the pipe on the bottom, so that when I put it into the 90 down here, I could snug it and twist it tight. But these diesels vibrate so often and so much that I think it's just going to end up vibrating loose, and I think it's just going to rattle like that, and it's going to drive me nuts. You know, if it did that all the time, I would rip this whole thing right back out and put the OEM muffler in. I didn't come this far to let it sound like crap, you know what I mean? So the only way around that I see is to make a piece of pipe permanently attached to that with a clamp that just barely sticks past the hood, and then make a permanent stack that attaches itself to the hood and comes down over top of the original stack piece. Okay guys, so it is now the next day. I just took the hood back off. I'm gonna drill my hole in the hood, which I'm not looking forward to do. I hope I get it right. I marked it all out and everything previously. I think I did that yesterday or the day before. But it's killing me because I really can't run this or start it or anything, because this piece right here is just sitting in the exit tube that I built off this new muffler. So it's just going to rattle like crazy, and I can't get it through the hood, so I can't start it, or else I'm going to fill my whole entire engine bay with soot. So I haven't really been able to use my tractor, so I said today I'm at least going to get that hole drilled on the hood, so that if I have to use my tractor, I could at least use it. I am not totally sure of what I'm going to do yet with the hood and how the stack is going to come off the hood. I'm still trying to figure that out. I figured the first step is get the hole drilled, see how far I could actually get this pipe to stick through the hood and still have the hood be able to open. And once I figure that out, I'll be able to figure out how exactly I want to run that stack off the hood. So anyway, let's get to drilling this. I already kind of started it off camera, just kind of getting everything lined up exactly where I wanted it, so it's not a complete disaster. So let me get you guys set up, and I'll get to drilling this. The hole size I'm drilling here is 2 1/8, just to give me a little bit more space of the 1.5 inch pipe that's coming through the hood. This way, when I open the hood, hopefully I have a little bit of wiggle room, and not to mention, if my hole's not perfect, it'll give me some free play as well. So hopefully this is large enough, because once I drill it, I really can't go bigger, because you lose your pilot hole. There goes the fucking bit. Of course, my pilot bit broke, so I'm using a different hole saw. Okay, it's got a hole in it. See how bad I fucked the paint up here. That side's not bad, but this side's got a couple little scratches when my pilot bit broke. Just a couple of them right here. Can't do nothing without at least one thing going wrong. A couple little scratches, no big deal. Okay, let's get this on the tractor and see how the pipe comes through. There's these bushings. The main hood hinge got one bolt going through and it uses a bushing on each side. So you want to make sure you put them back in. Closes. Okay. Take the shock dampener up. Get the headlights back in. By the way, if you guys haven't gotten these LED lights yet, you can get them on eBay. They're, I think, 20 bucks for the pair. Check them out. They're really bright. I think these are 5,000K. They made a big difference on the headlights of these tractors. Good cheap mod to do. I did it when I first bought the tractor. It was actually one of the first mods I ever did. Just like that. Get the other side. Okay guys, my tractor's officially back together, 100%. Let's see how close I got on my hole here. All right, looks like it's gonna work. Hey, I don't think that looks bad. I don't think that looks bad at all. My camera's about to die, so I'm gonna charge it up and I'll get back with you guys. Just give you one more quick look before I charge my camera up. Okay, I'll be back with you. Okay guys, I think I officially have the first Kubota BX with a stack pipe. Whether I'll keep it or not, that's still kind of undecided. I do like it. I can tell you that much. I think it looks really good. What I ended up doing after I cut that hole, I stuck the pipe in and the pipe was resting just slightly on the hood. When I started it up first, it made it vibrate like crazy, as you could imagine. So I took some 5/16 fuel line that I'm gonna be using for that fuel filter mod. I cut it in half and I wrapped it around the inside of the hole to make like a grommet. Now the stack pipe fits nice and snug. I mean, it's pretty solid in there. So no more vibration. I just left the tractor outside running for over an hour at like half throttle because I wanted to see if the hood bonnet got hot, and it did not. It was maybe lukewarm at best, and that was the entire bonnet. It wasn't just where the exhaust comes up, which is around this area right here. This is where I was focusing on, and this was not any warmer than anywhere else on this hood bonnet. So I can tell you for a fact this hood bonnet is not going to melt, and it's not going to be a problem with the way I have the exhaust routed. The only thing I'm trying to figure out now is exactly how I'm going to keep the stack, because I would like to open the hood without removing the stack. At least I could use my tractor again, but I would like to figure out a different plan for that. The other thing I'm going to be doing is I'll be painting this black, so it'll be matte black to match the rest of the exhaust that I painted, so that'll look really clean on here. Then I'm also going to cut a notch in the pipe, and also that's going to help with the sound of the exhaust, because right now it's just coming out through a perfectly round tube. A lot of the reason they cut this at like a 45-degree angle is to help with the sound. So it should sound a lot better as well when I cut this. It'll look pretty factory, I think. So that's probably going to be it for this video, guys. I will update you guys on this as I go along. I'm sorry I wasn't able to show you guys more work, like hands-on, of me tacking all the exhaust pieces together and how I ended up doing it all. But I hope that me kind of walking through the steps kind of showed you how I did it after the fact. And yeah, so if you guys like this kind of stuff, make sure you like and subscribe, show your friends. The next project is going to be adding that fuel filter. I know I've been talking about this for a week, but I'll be adding this fuel filter / water separator to the Kubota BX, and that is off an L series. So that is going to be the very next video, and I'm actually going to get to work on that right away. So hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.